Good evening, everyone, on this beautiful November night with snow on the ground here in Milwaukee and around the state, wherever you are. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having Leah Holloway, who's the program director for Milwaukee Riverkeeper, and her partner in good works.
There you
go. Jules Ott, who is with Leah. She is sustainability coordinator for Milwaukee Riverkeeper. So Leah is going to talk tonight about the Milwaukee Plastics Free MKE movement, which we hope will become Plastics Free WI, potentially, Plastics Free Wisconsin. So Leah is one of our wonderful partners in the green work we're doing here in Sherman Park, in partnership with the Milwaukee Environmental Collaborative Office program, and we all as ambassadors under the umbrella of Sherman Park Community Association. So we're grateful to Mabel, who is with us tonight, and Jermaine, who will be helping us as we record this webinar, and then look forward to sharing it in the future. So Leah, the other thing we should do is sometime we should have a webinar on underwater hockey.
Yeah, I would love to do that. We're always recruiting.
Leah is a scuba diver and also an avid underwater hockey player. So we'll have a webinar on that sometime. I'm sure it's good, clean, green fun.
All good things water.
Yeah, exactly. So let's launch in. We're also going to spend some time amongst ourselves talking about green gifting for the holidays. And then toward the 7 o'clock hour, we are going to share a recording of Eric Schomburger, who is the director of the Eco Office, who for the Sherman Park Green Ambassadors, Sherman Park Eco Ambassadors, recorded an overview of the proposed climate and equity program that people are in the midst of having conversation about. So, and Eric will share some of that, and we'll hopefully be able to share that with a broader audience as well. So Leah, thank you very much for leading tonight and for sharing good information about the plastic free movement. So I'm going to pass it on to Leah.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you all for being here, and thanks for inviting us. Let me share my screen. Sorry, I'm one thing at a time person here. There we go. All right. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Working with Sherman Park this year and the Eco Ambassadors and Sherman Park Community Association has been so fun. It's been one of my favorite things to do for plastic free recently. So I'm really excited to keep working with you all and keep improving Sherman Park. So like Tim said, I am the program manager for Milwaukee Riverkeeper and one of the lead organizers for Plastic Free MKE. So tonight I'm going to give a brief overview of the plastic free movement in Milwaukee. I'll talk a little bit about why we focus so heavily on plastics, and then I'll dive in what it means to be a lake-friendly neighborhood, which is our newest initiative that Sherman Park has helped us create and pilot, and it's taken off. So that's been really exciting. We'll talk a little bit about what we all as residents of Sherman Park can do to be a part of the movement. And then a big part of that discussion will include talking about the upcoming holiday season. And we want to hear from all of you on your ideas for reducing waste at parties and gift-giving events and all of the fun things that are about to occur over the next couple months. So we'll do a little brainstorming session. We'll share some resources on greening holidays, particularly around plastics, but really anything we do to reduce waste is good for the environment and all that good stuff. So that's where we're headed today. Well, first, a little introduction to Plastic Free MKE. If you've not heard of us before, we focus on collective action and systemic change, in addition to all those little things we can do to make a difference. We're a movement of volunteers, businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies like the ECO, all working together. I will drop our website in the chat if anyone wants to take a look at where we are. We can share these resources out after the webinar as well. But we're at Plastic Free. Our mission is to reduce the harms that unnecessary plastics have on environmental health, public health, and social justice. We're going to center those most harmed by plastics by building a community around plastic alternatives, advocating for producer and polluter accountability, and using collaborative problem solving to eliminate plastics in the Milwaukee area. And to be honest, the Lake Friendly Neighborhood program has been exactly that. It was built collaboratively between Plastic Free and the Sherman Park Eco Ambassadors. So that's pretty exciting. We envision a healthier Milwaukee for everyone, free from the harms of unnecessary plastics. So some of the initiatives that we do, these are mostly volunteer-led initiatives, either created by or entirely run by volunteers. We just kind of support them in their efforts. These are some of the things that they're doing to tackle the plastic challenge in Milwaukee. We really want to educate and build awareness in our community while simultaneously working to create systems that automatically reduce the amount of plastic we come in contact with in our lives. Plastics is such a big part of our lives that individuals by themselves aren't going to be able to make a huge dent. The individual actions we take are important, but they're not going to fix the problems that we're facing. So we really do need to focus on collective action and building awareness community-wide so that everyone can be a part of this movement. So we've done things like our grocery store educational initiatives. So one of our founding volunteers created this plastic bag monster costume, volunteers took this costume, this was pre-pandemic, took it out to Pick and Save stores and would wear it and just chat with people walking into Pick and Save about plastic bags, plastic grocery bags in particular. And the sign that the plastic bag monster is holding says, "How many bags am I wearing?" And so that was the way that we would get people's attention and we would engage with them. And the plastic bag monster is made out of 500 single-use plastic bags. That is the low end of the average number of plastic bags that a person in the United States uses each year. Depending on who you ask, some people say 1,000 or even 1,500. But no matter how you count it, we're all using a lot of single-use plastic bags. Most of those do wind up in the environment versus any other way of being disposed of. Plastic Free MKE has also supported zero waste events and runs. We worked with Bayview Bash and the Milwaukee Marathon and other events around the community to be zero waste or very low waste events. We worked with both the city of Milwaukee and the county of Milwaukee on their purchasing and protocol policies. In 2020, we started our water refill station initiative where we would go to community marches and events and rallies, and we would provide water in big jugs. So we could refill water bottles that people brought themselves, or if people didn't have their own water bottle, we would provide them with a free aluminum water bottle to take with them to help cut down on that single-use plastic. And it was especially important the summer of 2020 when we were all marching and protesting, and that's very thirsty work in the hot sun. And so we would be out there and we would go through, dozens of gallons of water at each event, trying to support the folks who are doing good work in our community. And we continue that program today. We've been to a couple Sherman Park events with our water refill stations. We're happy to come to other community events in the future as well. The Lake Friendly Business Program supports restaurants and other food service businesses like bars and cafes and food trucks in reducing their plastic consumption. That's a really big task for a business to undertake, especially businesses with really low margins. So we'll come in and we'll assess the materials that they're already using. We'll help make recommendations for different materials they could be using that are more sustainable. And then if they agree to a few guidelines that we have, then we can list them as a Lake Friendly business on our website, and we'll help promote them on our social media and newsletters. And we were even interviewed by Spectrum One News recently, and they specifically wanted to highlight a Lake Friendly business. So we went to Transfer Pizzeria and talked with the owner. And so there's always opportunities for the Lake Friendly businesses to get more promotion as well through the Lake Friendly program. So happy to support businesses in that sense. We do a lot of community outreach and education. So Jules and I and a lot of our volunteers go to a lot of community tabling events, and we just talk about who Plastic Free is and what we're doing, trying to engage the community. We are working on, we have a plastic education toolkit for educators, both formal educators in a classroom and non-formal educators at like nature centers and things to use. And we're working on a lesson where instructors from Milwaukee Riverkeeper can come in and lead an entire program for a teacher who maybe doesn't have that knowledge or resources themselves, but we can come in and teach that to their students. Boomerang Bags is another volunteer initiative where volunteers got together and they sewed cloth bags, and then they would leave them at local businesses so that if you came in and you didn't have a reusable bag with you, you could take one from the store and then drop it off at a different store in the community that was also a part of the program. And then we're currently working on a citywide reusable container system. This one's really exciting to us. It has a ton of potential to reduce those single-use plastic to-go containers that you're getting with your takeout. And also when you go to events at large venues like Pabst Theater, they're going to be one of our pilot locations to have reusable cups, so that when you go to these events, you get a beverage, it's going to be in a reusable cup instead of a single-use disposable plastic cup. So these and many other initiatives are things that Plastic Free MKE are working on, and again, mostly volunteer driven. So why do we focus on plastics? Images like this are just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the harms that plastic can cause. We realize that collective action is really, again, needed to tackle this challenge. So it's really important to remember throughout this discussion that the problem with plastic isn't the use of plastic. Plastic can actually be really helpful in our lives and sometimes necessary. But the problem is the overuse, the single use, and improper disposal of plastics. So some of the reasons that plastics are really important is better food protection and distribution, so we can get food to last longer and go further to folks who need it. Medical advancements like prosthetic limbs are just better when they're made of plastic. Cheaper and sometimes safer products like cars and infrastructure, electrical wiring. These are all reasons why plastics are now and will continue to be a part of our lives forever. But then you look at things like this, plastic lining in aluminum cans. There are plastic chemicals in our sunscreens and shampoos to make them more spreadable. Our Q-tips are now made of plastic. Our tea bags are now made of plastic. All the fancy wrapping paper that we're about to start using for the holiday season, anything that's glittery. Oh my gosh, I love glitter, but glitter is made of plastic. Anything that's glittery or shiny, all of that is plastic. So we don't always see the ways that plastic is hidden in our lives. It is impossible to avoid. There's no way to live a completely plastic-free life. So a couple other examples, things that are often materials like countertops and things that might be made to look like wood or granite or stone. They're often made out of plastic to be lighter and cheaper to produce. I mentioned the, like the liquid plastic in sunscreen and shampoo to make it more spreadable. A lot of these things are just hidden, so we can't avoid them even if we know about them. A lot of our food items are only found in plastic. There's not another way to purchase. Ketchup, for example, is very hard to find in a glass jar anymore. So there's just a lot of ways that it's become embedded in our lives. And plastics cause harm to both human and environmental health every single step of the way. So there's extraction. Plastic is made from oil and natural gas. That's the base of it. And so extraction is very polluting. And again, all of these are really harmful to human health as well. So the production process is very harmful. The point of sale, there's harm being caused there as well. And then we buy it, we use it, and then we throw it away or try and recycle it or dispose of it in some other way. And the waste industry is very, very harmful. We'll talk more about that. Most plastics in the world are either dumped or burned. And so burning plastics puts a lot of toxins into the air. Even recycling plastics puts a lot of toxins into the air and our water. When they get into the environment, they break down into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic where they're getting into our food and water, but also the breaking down process releases methane. So plastics are driving climate change in that sense, but also the production of plastic is driving climate change. And it's anticipated that plastic production will be a bigger driver of climate change than even coal in the next 15 to 20 years. So there's just a lot of reasons why our focus on plastics is really harmful. So all of these steps, like I mentioned, they degrade air and water quality. They're harming the communities that are living around these facilities. Asthma and cancer rates are spiking all over places that have plastic production and disposal factories. And then, like I mentioned, these plastic products are getting into our foods and beverages, and they're even leaching toxic chemicals directly into our food and beverages. So water that comes in a plastic water bottle, especially if it's in a hot warehouse or a hot truck, which you wouldn't know when you buy it. When plastic is heated, it releases tons and tons of those toxic chemicals into the water that we're drinking or into the food that we're eating out of plastics. So there's just so many health impacts that we're only just starting to scratch the surface on understanding what that's doing in our bodies. So in the meantime, there's no legislation saying we have to fix this like there are for some other toxic things like lead. We just have to do our best to try and reduce our own plastic consumption and keep it out of the environment as much as we can. So what can we do as a community? The problem with plastic is a big one. It's not going to be solved by individual actions alone, like I mentioned. We're going to need to work together to create larger systemic changes where we can. So when we started working with the Sherman Park Eco Ambassadors a while back, I think in early 2021, late 2020 maybe, we really quickly recognized that your neighbors in Sherman Park are deeply committed to change and improving the community for the betterment of all. And we really wanted to help celebrate and support that passion and dedication. And the Sherman Park Communities Association and the Eco Ambassadors have just really done amazing things. And at the same time, the Eco Ambassadors recognize that plastics are a big problem and that working to reduce plastics in the community will help build a stronger Sherman Park. So we sat down and we worked together to think through what it might look like for an entire neighborhood to be thinking about plastics. So with that, I want to introduce you to the Lake Friendly Neighborhood Program. And I will say, so Milwaukee Riverkeeper held an event last night. It was our annual fall member event, and we mentioned the Lake Friendly Neighborhood Program. And we also mentioned that your Sherman Park Eco Ambassadors have gotten over 50 community members to sign up to learn more about plastics in just 1 month of being a lake friendly neighborhood. You all got a huge round of applause. People were so excited to hear about the work that you're all doing and the commitment that you've made to plastics. So our community greatly appreciates the work that you're doing and the example that you're all setting for everyone. So the Sherman Park Eco Ambassadors have agreed to attending some biannual plastic-free meetings. They've signed up for the plastic-free email list. Sherman Park is sharing out plastic-free events and updates with their community so that you all can learn about things that are happening in plastic-free and attend as you're able. Eco Ambassadors have agreed to help us work with Sherman Park businesses to learn about the Lake Friendly program and maybe so that we can support them as well. And we also love hearing about the events that are happening in Sherman Park so that we can help promote them and share them out with our audience and get some other folks to come in and learn about what Sherman Park is doing. And then we also borrowed the logo and we put it on our website because we're really proud of the work that you all are doing. So that's pretty much it. That's the basis of what it takes to be a lake friendly neighborhood. There's a few other optional activities we encourage neighborhoods to take as a part of this program, such as working with the Tobacco Free Alliance, which is a part of the city of Milwaukee, to help install cigarette butt receptacles. The Tobacco Free Alliance has a program called Hold On to Your Butts MKE, which I just love the title of. But most people don't recognize or don't know that tobacco products are made of plastic. Cigarette filters are plastic. They're also the most littered type of trash in the entire world. And that holds true locally. It's the #1 type of trash that we consistently find in our cleanups. So having cigarette butt receptacles and some signage around the community is a great way to help reduce the amount of cigarette butts that are being littered in your neighborhood. We're also talking about possibly establishing a new community drop-off point for plastic film recycling, since that can't be recycled in your curbside recycling. Sherman Park is also talking about composting. So composting food and lawn waste is a really great way to reduce what's going into our landfills. That also helps reduce plastics in a lot of ways, but it's just healthier communities and healthier waste disposal systems, and plastic free supports all of that. So talking about composting is another thing that a neighborhood can do to become lake friendly. Sherman Park can host annual community trash cleanup events, and I know you all do that already. So that's another step that neighborhoods can take to be lake friendly. And then also inviting us to present at community events at least once a year helps us get the word out about what we're doing and help promoting the commitments that a neighborhood has made. So Sherman Park's been really great. I think this is my third, or Plastic Free's third webinar that we've helped or been a part of. So we really appreciate being invited back to keep talking to your neighborhood and your community about all the good things that are happening. So one way that Sherman Park Eco Ambassadors are working to help spread the word about plastics through the community is with yard signs. Plastic Free created these signs for Sherman Park residents to put in their yards to show a commitment to reducing plastics and to start a conversation with their neighbors about why they feel it's important to do that. So one of the most impactful things we can all do is spread the word on how plastics are harming our health and the environment so that we can build awareness at a community level. So that the QR code here on the signs takes you to the Plastic Free MK website where you can sign a pledge to reduce plastics in your lives. There's a couple different versions of the pledge. The one we created specifically for the lake friendly neighborhood groups is on ways to reduce plastic in your homes. There's a lot of tips that come along with signing the pledge. So a lot of resources there to help you get started. And there are just so many ways we can all work to reduce our plastic consumption that it can easily become overwhelming and frustrating really quickly. So once you start to notice it, you do start to realize that plastic is everywhere. So we really encourage everyone to take small steps and embrace a practice over perfection or grace over guilt attitude. You just simply won't be able to avoid all plastic all of the time. But by being more aware of the ways in which we use plastic, we can make more mindful choices to reduce that consumption over time. So if you are a Sherman Park resident and you are interested in getting your own yard sign, we do have a few left. You can take the pledge to reduce plastics in your home. I'm going to drop the pledge link in the chat. And again, we can include some of these resources in a follow-up email if that's good with Sherman Park. And so if you take that pledge, we can follow up with you and help you get a yard sign to put it in your own yard. So that's pretty exciting. We're really grateful for everything that Sherman Park has done and for helping us create this program. We've already had interest from another small neighborhood in becoming a lake-friendly neighborhood. So that's pretty exciting. So what can we all do as individuals? One of the best ways to reduce our plastic consumption is to just simply buy less stuff. Businesses hate it when I say this. It's very anti-consumeristic. We live in a consumeristic society. So this is a tricky one, but if it's not made of plastic, it's probably shipped in plastic, it's probably packaged in plastic. There are a lot of sustainable versions of single-use plastic items on the market today, but the trade-offs are not always really clear. If you're going to buy something that's more durable than a single-use plastic item, you need to use it a lot to make up for the increase in greenhouse gas emissions of producing a more durable product. So it's not always a clear, like, this isn't single use, so it must be better for the environment. There's not always clear connections there. Oh, Tim's pens. Is that what you're waving at me about? Tim's making wild gestures at me. Really
no, I'm pointing at Bonnie because she does all these things.
Oh, oh, that's fantastic. Oh, good for you, Bonnie. Yeah, these are all great things. And if you can build these into your lives slowly, it's a little bit less overwhelming than just like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I have to do all of these things all at once. You don't. Build them into your life slowly over time and they'll become habit. But yeah, Tim has some really great pens. So if you ever meet Tim at an event, he'll maybe hand you a pen that's like all recycled paper and metal. There's no plastic on it. We love them. So let's see. it's nearly impossible for the average consumer to really fully understand the impact of, like, you know, how much carbon is going into a product and how much water is going into a product, and what's the marine debris impact, the trash impact of this product, what's the health impact of using this product. Even if you did have time to do all that research, you wouldn't be able to find all of that information. So that's why we say we just buy less stuff. And that's a really great first place to start. If you don't really need it, or if you can get it somewhere else, that's better than buying new products, even if they're sustainable or a greener version. And I put finger quotes around those because companies will do a lot to tell you that their product is sustainable when it might not be. So we recommend that people use what you already have. I drink exclusively out of mason jars these days because I just built up a collection, and, you know, I don't need anything else. You know, can you make some of your own cleaning products? Can you make some own gifts? Like to-go kits. So if you're traveling a lot and you always really like to have, you know, like silverware and fork and knife and napkin in your car, can that be a fork and a knife and a napkin from your kitchen that are made of metal in a cloth napkin that you can use and just have that in your car? Can you shop secondhand? Milwaukee has a lot of, if you are a Facebook user, we have a lot of buy nothing Facebook groups. There's like a buy nothing Milwaukee group, and a lot of the smaller neighborhoods have them as well. And people will post like, hey, I've got this stuff. Anybody want it? Or you can be like, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. And if somebody has it and they're not using it, they'll let you know and you can get it for free. Craigslist is another resource. There's usually a lot of recycling resources on Craigslist. Or you could host a community stuff swap. So Plastic Free held one in August at the Urban Ecology Center, and we had maybe 15, 20 people bring stuff that they no longer needed in their houses. They did a clean out of the closets and the garages, and they brought all this stuff, and a ton of community members came and found new homes for a lot of things. I'll tell you, I brought a lot of stuff that I thought no one's going to want this. All of it found a new home. Every single item eventually found a new home. We partnered with a group that does free recycling. They're called For Martha, and they're on Center Street. And they took all of the stuff that we had left from the stuff swap and gave all of it a new home for free. It was such a great community event. We got to talk to people, meet new neighbors. So hosting community stuff swaps is a great way to give things new life. And when you do have to buy local, we recommend, you know, when you do have to buy something, we recommend buying it from a local store, prioritizing high quality products that'll last a long time. So we have a lot of resources on reducing your plastic consumption on our website. There are a lot of other guides out there as well in the world. So we also did, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, we did a whole series of, we called them a swap series, where we like said, here, you know, here's a plastic toothbrush. Here are the alternatives to plastic toothbrushes. So a lot of good resources out there. And I do want to take a minute to talk about recycling. Recycling is great for aluminum, glass, and paper. But most plastics aren't actually effectively recycled. And all of the companies and the governments telling us that if we just recycled better, plastic would be less of a problem and we could keep making everything in plastic, but that's just not the case. These are really just distracting messages to keep us from pushing companies and governments to do the real change that they don't really want to do. But that being said, there are a few plastics that can be effectively recycled, and so it's important that we know how to recycle properly, so that we're not making the system less effective than it already is. So the city of Milwaukee has a great resource that kind of talks about all the different examples. So in Milwaukee, we can recycle plastics that have a number 1, a number 2, or a number 5 on them. They need to be pretty clean, not like, you know, to scrub them, but you want to get most of the food out of there and you want it to be dry. You do want to include the caps on them. So leave those lids on and chuck them in your recycling bin. So a couple of the problems with recycling is that wish cycling is a really common practice. So it's just like, I really want this to be recyclable. I don't want to throw this away. Hopefully they can recycle it. I'm going to put it in my recycling bin. And then it turns out that actually makes recycling more expensive and less effective, because then somebody at the recycling center has to pull that out and throw it away anyway. So wish cycling is an important thing to avoid. And I am so super guilty of wish cycling. I hate throwing plastic away. It hurts my heart. But if it's not actually recyclable, you just got to throw it out or find a different use for it. I make my own laundry soap, and I have so many of those Simply Orange juice containers that you can see in that picture there, full of laundry soap in my basement. So cities have different rules about recycling based on the markets for those recyclable materials. So the recycling plant does have to be able to sell what we send them. So that's where, making sure things are the right material, making sure they're clean, come into play, because if they're not clean, if they're the wrong material, then the recycling plant can't sell them. It is a market-driven process. So we do have to follow the rules to make sure that it can be done effectively. Fortunately, Wisconsin recycling is the law. The city must provide recycling for all single to 4 family housing. Private companies and large apartment complexes are required to kind of provide their own recycling. We hear a lot of stories from people who are saying, like, my apartment complex or my office is just throwing their recycling away, which is frustrating. But it is the law in Wisconsin. So if you see that kind of thing, you can report it to the city and they will hopefully take action on that. And we did, I think this was in 2021, we actually hosted a whole webinar just on recycling. It's on our Facebook and YouTube pages. So if you're interested in learning more about recycling in Milwaukee, you can check out that webinar there. The other problem with recycling is that plastic just gets downcycled. So it doesn't actually get turned. You can't turn a plastic water bottle into a plastic water bottle. You can turn a plastic water bottle into a t-shirt, and that's probably the end of its cycle. Those fibers are so degraded after them, it probably can't actually be turned into anything else. Maybe one more thing, but then it does get landfilled. So that's another reason that plastic recycling isn't really the best solution. It's part of the solution. But we need to stop letting governments and companies get away with telling us, like, oh, we made a more recyclable product, instead of changing the material that they're using altogether. It's important to remember that reducing plastics is a marathon, it's not a sprint. One of the most common questions we get is, how do I stick to a plastic-free lifestyle for a really long time? And the key here is just really making small changes, one at a time. Think about what's bugging you the most in your life. What's your biggest source of plastics, and what can you do to reduce it? Start there. And then once you've established that habit, is there another one that you can build into your life? So it is a slow process sometimes, but that's more sustainable that way. So, and then remember, just that grace over guilt attitude. Life gets in the way. I slip up when I'm traveling a lot, or sometimes a family member might be sick and you can't keep to your plastic-free routines, or life is just super overwhelming from time to time, and all you can do is just make sure everybody's fed and that's it. That's all you've got energy for. That's okay. You might have to use, buy food and pre-made food in non-recyclable plastic containers from time to time. And, don't let that slow you down. Grace over guilt, get back on track when you can. So that's a message that we try and share a lot. And it's also really important to act with others. So encourage others to reduce their plastic. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your elected officials that you care about plastics. The chance to meet Representative Supremoro Mukunde shortly before the election. And he was telling me how much he hates plastic bags. So I sent him an email. It's like, guess what? I do too. Can we get rid of the law in Wisconsin that keeps us from banning plastic bags? I haven't heard back, but I'm still hopeful because I know they bug him too. So acting with others is really important. So this is the part that's really impactful. It's going to take more than our own personal choices. So challenge your friends, write letters, join a plastic-free MKE action. I heard the phrase once, get drastic about plastic with others. So always remember that giving up plastic is hard. Be kind to each other. We don't want to shame anybody for the choices that they're making. We just want to help them understand and help them make better ones when we can. We don't need a few people doing it perfectly. We need as many people as possible doing it imperfectly. So, that's one of the most impactful things that you can do to help reduce plastic consumption in Sherman Park and in Milwaukee overall. So, another thing that I've heard is for the elected officials part, especially local elected officials. I've heard from them that they might only hear from 2 or 3 of their constituents on an issue. So make sure you're one of them. Have 5 or 10 people write a letter with you. And all of a sudden that elected official is going to be like, oh, holy cow, people care about this issue. I need to care about this issue too. So, never doubt that your letters make a difference and your phone calls and your emails make a difference, especially at the local level. It's really, really important to stay connected to your local elected officials because that's where real change happens. So pick an issue, pick something that you want them to do or pay attention to, and get a couple friends to write a letter with you, and it'll make a big difference. So I'm going to pause here for a second and see if anybody has any questions or comments or stories to share about plastic consumption or the lake-friendly neighborhood experience so far in Sherman Park.
Thank you, Leah. This was great. Every time you do a webinar and every time we meet, I learn something more. Tell the story about how straws actually got banned in the city.
Oh, yeah. So the state of Wisconsin does have a law on the books that says that no municipality is allowed to ban or tax or in other ways hinder the use of any type of container. So that's things like we can't ban styrofoam, we can't ban plastic bags, we can't tax plastic bags, things like that. That's a statewide law. So the city of Milwaukee thought, well, straws aren't a container. They don't contain anything, so we can ban plastic straws. So in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, the Milwaukee Common Council actually banned single-use plastic straws in the city of Milwaukee because they're not a container. So there's sneaky ways around some of those ordinances and laws that we have in place. And there are exceptions to this ban for folks who need them. Folks with certain abilities need a plastic straw. They work better than other types of straws for certain folks. So there are definitely exceptions, but feel free, like when you go into a local restaurant and they give you a straw, feel free to say, hey, did you know that Milwaukee has a straw ban in effect? What are your plans for, following that ordinance? You don't have to be mean about it. Your servers are working hard. They might not even know about it. But start that conversation.
That's a great story. Anybody else on the webinar that has a question for Leah about the plastics free movement?
Leah, you mentioned that plastic bottles in high heat can leach the chemicals from the plastic. How hot are we talking?
Your dishwasher will do it. So if you have a plastic water bottle that you wash in your dishwasher, it's gonna just that washing process is gonna release it, like breaks down the plastic enough, and then it starts releasing more and more toxics. There was a study done. A group took like Gatorade squeeze plastic bottles that we get a lot at like youth sporting events, and they did a study. They put they tested the water for plastic level before they put it in the water bottle, and then they put water in a brand new plastic squeezy bottle, and then one that had gone through a dishwasher just once, and both bottles had a significant like plastic fragments and then also just a lot more chemicals in the water than the original water source. But the one that had been dishwashed just once had so much more of the toxic chemicals in it. So if a plastic water bottle is sitting in your car in the summer, or even on a sunny winter day, you know how your dash gets like really hot, that's enough to release extra toxins. So your dishwasher, I'm not sure about hand washing. I don't know how hot that gets, but any sort of heat. We've known for a long time not to microwave our food in plastics, it's been known, not everybody knows that, just because the messaging has not been great. But if you microwave food in plastic containers, that again is just leaching tons and tons of chemicals, and they're endocrine disruptor chemicals. So they're messing with your hormones in a pretty serious way.
Leo, what do those reusable cups look like, or what are they made of that you said some places will offer?
Yeah, so those are going to be plastic. The company that is moving to Milwaukee to help build a system, so again, this is one of those like crazy trade-offs, right? So they did a lot of research on the carbon footprint and the water footprint and the sustainability footprint of glass and aluminum and plastic and a couple other materials. And so on looking at just those alone, the solid, it's a very sturdy type of plastic that they're made out of. Those are better than glass or aluminum from an environmental standpoint, but they didn't look at the health impacts. So we really want this system to be brought to Milwaukee. This system would really build the infrastructure for making better systems, right? It's kind of like a baby step thing is what we're going for. So those would be plastic, but they're going to reduce a lot of the single-use plastics. So that'll really help things on an environmental front. But we are sharing the health impact information with this company in the hopes that once they get their warewashing and transport infrastructure up and running, then maybe they would consider at some point offering a glass or aluminum or stainless steel version of their product.
Leah, you did a Milwaukee Riverkeeper hosted a gentleman who's really taken it on as his passion to reduce plastics in the world and microplastics especially, which are things we don't see, that go into the water system. When you do your Riverkeeper water tests on the Milwaukee River and the KK and Menominee, do you find plastics in your when you do the tests on the water that you sample?
Yeah, so we don't have a great way of testing for microplastics. I mean, we definitely find like the fragments everywhere when we do trash cleanups, and every time we're out in the environment, we find fragments of plastics, but we don't have the capabilities yet to test in the field for like nanoplastics, the really teeny tiny pieces. We definitely, see what's visible to the eye. So nanoplastics and microfibers, which are like fibers coming from our fleece clothing. So like almost all of our clothes, unless it's like 100% cotton or 100% wool, has some plastic in it. And when we wash it, those shed fibers into the environment. That's a whole nother webinar, I think. Jules and I just screened a movie on the plastics in our closets. But those little fibers, we don't have the ability to detect them right now. We did talk with Milwaukee Waterworks, which is the organization that takes water out of Lake Michigan and treats it and ships it to all of our homes and businesses. They are able to filter down to 2 nanomicron size, I believe. I'm going to get that number wrong. You think I'd know that having gone to the School of Freshwater Sciences, but units of measurement were never my strong suit. So they filter out quite a bit of the plastic that's in Lake Michigan, that's getting into our drinking water. But those fibers, they can't filter out those fibers that are coming from our clothes. And there's some other pieces that are small enough to slip through their filters. So it is getting into our drinking water. One of the groups that we work with on our education, so Earth Echo International is a group that created these really amazing water quality testing kits for kids. They're super simple, but really accurate. And they test for a lot of the same things that Milwaukee Riverkeeper tests for when we do our water quality monitoring. And they're actually trying, I got to meet the founder earlier this year, and he said that they are trying to find a way to include a plastics test in those kits. I have no idea where that process is, but I'm really hoping that we do have a really easy to use, cheap, accessible way for measuring plastic in the field.
So what about when you bring a gallon of milk home in the plastic jug and stick it in your refrigerator? Is there still plastic leaching out into the milk?
Yeah, probably. I haven't seen any studies on it, but just based on what I do know, I'm guessing yes. It's cold, and that won't have ever been heated because it's milk and it's kept refrigerated all the time. It will be slower than, a beverage that has the potential to be sitting on a hot truck or in a warehouse for a while. But it is probably still leaching chemicals into our milk, unfortunately.
Also, I've been reading about a bacteria that UW-Madison is studying and experimenting with that eats the PFAS
Mhm.
plastics. I guess they're from like smoke detector or fire extinguishers, things like that.
Mhm.
And is that the same as, could that bacteria eat the microplastics that come from like plastic bags that are wearing down in the environment, or is that different?
Potentially. So PFAS are they're called forever chemicals. It's a whole family of like 7,000 or 8,000 different chemicals fall under that category. And they do come from like firefighting foams. They're the Teflon in our pans. They make things
Oh.
less flammable and less sticky.
Mm.
So anything you don't want to stick probably is covered in something that contains
Oh.
PFAS. So they're different from plastics, but I've heard of plastic eating bacteria as well. I think a big problem with that is that it's slow. We have so much plastic and they can go through, and I've also seen like, there's a new mushroom that we found will eat plastic, but it's never going to be enough to even, break down and consume the amount of plastic that exists in the world today, let alone the amount that we're producing every single day. And then also, I think there's probably not enough studies yet to understand like what happens next. What happens to that bacteria and those mushrooms next? How do we dispose of those bacteria that have just eaten a ton of plastic, and what happens? What does that do? Maybe it just changes the shape of it, but not the actual problem. I have not heard any studies that answers that question yet. So there are a lot of people that are working on things like that, but they're not happening fast enough. And there's not enough information to know if those are actual solutions or if those are like temporary Band-Aid solutions that are distracting us from the fact that we really just need to use less plastic. It's really hard to know the difference.
Leah, are there any campaigns around the country for people to begin to use carryout containers that aren't plastic, that when you go for carryout food? Is there any campaigns around the country for this?
Yeah, there are a few cities that are already doing this. Durham, North Carolina is one. Ashland, Oregon is another that comes to mind. And that's the kind of thing that we want to bring to Milwaukee. So the company that we're talking about, it's called R-Cup. They have chosen Milwaukee as their next market.
Okay.
Partly because plastic free is here and we're already building up the awareness and the knowledge and the resources for them to build a new market. So what they're going to do is they're going to build a facility where they can wash these containers.
Mhm.
And they're going to bring a cup and a to-go container, so that when you go to Outpost and you're getting, your delicious vegan lasagna that they make that I'm obsessed with, you'll be able to get that in a reusable plastic container in the next couple of years. And then the idea is, so they're going to start, there's 4 entities in Milwaukee that have agreed to be a pilot. So R-Cup's going to come in, they're going to build their warewashing facility. They're going to buy the trucks and hire the truck drivers. And then these 4 organizations are going to pilot. And then once that gets established, once they're like, yep, we can make money doing this. Yep, this is a system that works. Then hopefully they're going to open it up to anyone to be a part of. So they need to do a certain number of containers to, cover their costs. But then hopefully once they're doing that, it will be affordable for, Sherman Phoenix to support and to buy enough containers for all of their restaurants to be able to give us takeout food in these containers. Still TBD on that, but that's the goal. That's the dream.
So we would get the food in that container, take it home, eat, use it, and then return it to get cleaned again, or what?
Yep. And you wouldn't even necessarily need to bring it back to the same business. So thinking of like, I live by North Avenue, right? So I could walk down to Heaven's Table Barbecue, get some delicious barbecue in a to-go container, take it home, eat it, bring it back dirty when I go to Palermo Taco and Tequila.
Yeah.
and give them my dirty container and take home my tacos in a clean container. And then
Okay.
our cup will come to the businesses and they'll pick up the dirty containers and deliver clean ones for them. So it's a service that the businesses will have to buy. They'll have to buy the containers and pay for that service. The models that they've shown indicate that it will be fairly cost competitive. It's not going to be like going from a compostable container to this reusable one. It's not going to be a huge price increase. So ideally, the businesses are eating that cost and not putting it onto the consumer, but you might see a slight increase in the price of your food to help cover that container cost. But we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
If you get behind it, you don't mind paying a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. You know, the people who can, you know, I'm
Yeah.
like, I would be happy to pay. Not everyone can afford that, but you know, we want to make it as equitable as possible. The other thing that we'd really love to do is to get containers like this into places like assisted living facilities that are using styrofoam trays right now, or schools that are using styrofoam trays right now for kids, right? So if we can create the infrastructure, the warewashing facilities and the transport infrastructure, then, you know, potentially we can buy steel trays and use those instead of styrofoam. And really, and then then there's no cost burden to the customer because those customers are students and, you know, people who aren't paying like per meal for their food. So that really makes it more equitable. It's not something that you have to seek out. It's just automatically given to you as a service, which is, you know, better than those like upsell for sustainability models. So
Great.
we're trying to make it as available to folks as we possibly can.
Yeah, we're really talking about major systemic change, which is great. And we're part of that. I think what we're going to do is a little adjustment on our agenda. I have a couple, selfishly, I have a couple more questions related to the plastics free movement that might be of interest to others. And we'll get the word out about green gift giving through other vehicles.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
do
you
that.
had so many great questions. Let's keep doing this. I'm going to send you all of the green gift giving resources and folks can peruse them on their own time. We'll do another webinar, whatever you want to do. That sounds good.
We'll find a way of doing that. And then hopefully we can share with some more Sherman Park residents at the Sherman Park Community Association annual meeting in December. So keep an eye out for that as well. Two questions. One is, and I have a friend of mine from another part of the state who's a United Church of Christ member and part of our creation care team is on board. And I'm wondering about partners that you have around the state. Are there other organizations in other parts of the state that you're partnering with around this plastic-free movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of our goals from the beginning is to create a model that can be spread everywhere. So we're still building those connections. I personally have done presentations in Ashland, Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Madison. I feel like there's been a couple others. I'm also now, because of the presentation I did in Ashland, I was invited to join a statewide group of conservation district employees to think through, it's a very new group. We've only met twice. But to think through plastic from what can they do through their role as conservation district professionals. So we're really hoping to spread the movement that way. If we can get those folks on board, and it's literally all over the state. There was like 15 to 20 people on this call from all over the state. And I just want to hand them plastic-free MKE and say, go forth and bring this to your communities. It's all here. We've got the resources. We've done the research. We know how this works. You know, take the parts that make sense to your community and do those and forget the rest. You know, he doesn't have to follow the model exactly, but we feel like we've built a really strong model for other communities to just pick this up and go with it quickly. You know, we started down here. We started with volunteers that just wanted to pick up trash, and that's great. But that's not going to get to the problem. And then they were like, oh, this is a bigger problem. Let's start here. And so they've built, so Plastic Free in 2018 started here, and now we're here. And a lot of other groups are coming in like here. And I want to just be like, nope, jump to here. You don't have to do all of this other work. Here's all the information you need. Here are the resources, you know, take whatever you need from what we've done and make it your own and go for it so that nobody has to start from scratch. And there are a lot of other like plastic coalitions. So Plastic Free MKE is a member of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, and we're a member of the Break Free from Plastic Coalition. And so there's other like national and global movements that we're a part of. And we're all just trying to share resources and spread the word that way versus everyone starting from the bottom and reinventing the wheel. So we are having conversations statewide. We've also been approached by both Cincinnati, Ohio and Indianapolis, Indiana to learn more about what we've done. And Milwaukee Riverkeeper has friends in the Waterkeeper Alliance all over the world, but we have really strong connections with other Great Lakes Waterkeeper groups. So there's a group in Buffalo that I'm talking to about plastic free. So maybe we could have a plastic free Buffalo, New York. So right now it's very Wisconsin and Great Lakes focused, but ideally this model can be used anywhere.
The other question, thanks, that's great, because I think that being a part of that movement and connecting you with other organizations around the state that we may be connected with would be another green path for us.
Yeah, I would love that.
Is there anybody in the state legislature, and maybe we need to work on Supreme, to be a champion of this?
I think Supreme is a great option. Every conversation I've had with him has been just, he wants to work really hard for his community, and he also just personally feels strongly about these issues. So I think he's a good avenue. There are others. Someone recently sent me, so the plastic bag ban, I think, was passed in maybe 2010 or 2016 or something like that. And then a few years later, I think in 2018, a group did introduce a bill that would overturn the ban on bans in Wisconsin. And of course, it wasn't even voted on. But there are other people in the legislature and the assembly that are thinking about this and that care about it. The challenge is that they're not going to get anywhere right now. Unfortunately, the realities of our current governance are challenging. So that doesn't mean we don't keep working on it. It doesn't mean we don't keep asking about it. But being realistic, it's not going to change anytime soon. But yeah, definitely something to keep thinking about. Plastic Free MKE has working groups that all the coalition members and volunteers are invited to join. And one of them is specifically on policy. And that's one thing that we want to take a look at in the coming year is it time for us to push this again? You know, do we draft up legislation and get some partners and see what we can do with it? Or do we hang on for a little bit longer? So it's something that we're thinking about for sure.
Evan Goike's the other guy, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's
Good
heavily
too.
on this.
Yeah, both Evan and Supreme were at our tree planting on Arbor Day, which was a good indication of their commitment.
Yep.
You know, I'm thinking that it might be good for us here in Sherman Park to meet with Supreme specifically around environmental issues, and then also representatives from Wisconsin conservation voters
Mhm.
to get them involved. You know, they just gave Attorney General Josh Call, or they just had him at their annual meeting. Any other questions for Leah? This has been wonderful.
I love all of your questions. These have been so great. They really let us highlight some of these other things that we were talking about and thinking about.
Yeah, thank you, John, for your comment. John was just thanking everybody. Thank you. This has been worthwhile. It's amazing to me how much people are spending buying water in plastic bottles. What an effort for Milwaukee Water System to spend dollars on advertising the quality of Milwaukee water. This may be additionally important as the Water Restoration Partnership starts cleaning up the Milwaukee River. Yeah, so John had to leave, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Milwaukee Riverkeeper is a part of that Waterway Restoration Partnership, and we're working really hard on the AOC. And so all that ties together. We'll definitely make sure that we're cross-pollinating our work there and keeping plastics in mind. And we do have a close connection with the One Water project also, which is I don't know if you've heard about it. You probably got a mailer about it in your last water bill, because that was they're starting to connect. But it's the idea that like our wastewater system, our drinking water system, and then our rivers and our lakes, they're all one water. They're all connected, and we need to treat them that way.
Yeah.
Because so many people treat them as very separate systems, and they are very much the same system. So the One Water project, I don't know if it was in my water bill or not, but they're supposed to be sending out information on on the One Water project, but I think
Okay,
plastics
great.
is another thing that they could be a part
Great.
of.
Good. Thank you, Leah. Thank you so much. And
Thank
Jules,
you
for
all.
your participation in the presentation, helping to get it ready. So we'll try to share this with a broader audience and connect more people with the plastic-free movement. So we're gonna move. Jermaine's gonna link us to a presentation that Eric Schomburger with Environmental Collaborative Office did for our Sherman Park Green Ambassadors, our Eco Ambassadors on Monday. Brief 25-minute presentation on the proposed climate and equity plan of Milwaukee. And we decided to put this on this webinar so that we could get the word out, because they're looking for input through the month of November. And then they're hoping to bring it to the Common Council, I think Steve and Ann and Mabel and Jermaine, I think in January,
Okay.
and Leah. So I'm going to sign off, but please stay on and watch it if you haven't seen it, and we'll have it as part of this webinar and we'll distribute it broadly. So thank you again, Leah. This was wonderful. And
Thanks, Tim.
give thanks for our partners as we're doing this good green work here in this part of God's green earth, Sherman Park.
Thanks,
We
So
Tim.
sure
take care,
appreciate
everybody.
Enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
And just confirm you can see it.
We can see it, can't hear it. So
Yeah, that haven't started yet. Just needed that confirmation you can see it. Okay, here it goes. Thinking. Try to push it up.
Okay, great, thanks. To help make that ambassadors get on board in both promoting and supporting the effort. So welcome to Eric Schomburger.
Jermaine, we can't see it.
Okay, rebooted. Let's try this again.
From the Environmental Collaborative Office. Thanks, Eric. Take it away.
Thanks so much. As many of you know, ECO has been working closely with Sherman Park to help make that neighborhood an eco neighborhood, but that's part of our bigger effort to make Milwaukee a world-class eco city. And so today we're excited to share with you the Milwaukee's Climate and Equity Plan, which is currently out for public review in draft form. And we hope to get it adopted by February of next year. So through some of this because this is from our town hall. We don't have all the same.
An introduction to the Climate and Equity Plan, and we'll continue to have conversations about how the ambassadors can get on board in both promoting and supporting the effort done. So welcome to Eric Schomburger from the Environmental Collaborative Office. Thanks, Eric. Take it away.
Thanks so much. As many of you know, ECO has been working closely with Sherman Park to help make that neighborhood an eco neighborhood, but that's part of our bigger effort to make Milwaukee a world-class eco city. And so today we're excited to share with you the Milwaukee's Climate and Equity Plan, which is currently out for public review in draft form. And we hope to get it adopted by February of next year. So I'll skip through some of this because this is from our town hall. We don't have all of the same speakers here, but we'll explain the climate plan and what's involved. So here is the link, and I'll put it in the chat as well, so you can go straight to the climate plan. But it's the draft. That's what it looks like, and we do want your comments by November 30th of this year to make sure we got it right. So basically, I think most of us know that climate change is a serious issue, at least most people on this call. This is an example of a storm we had in August of 2021, where there was severe storms that knocked power out for 100,000 people around here. This is on top of major floods that we've had in 2008 and 2010 that have caused real problems. So climate change isn't just a thing for the coast on the oceans. We're a coastal city here in Milwaukee, and we've experienced these extreme storms that are becoming more and more common because of climate change. And of course, there's problems in the West with droughts and wildfires. We have, literally in the American West, there's whole cities that are going to be struggling with water shortages. We don't get on top of this issue. Here in Milwaukee, we have urban heat islands from all this asphalt and pavement and not enough trees, where it's warmer here, and it's a real health hazard on the hottest, humidest days. We have air pollution, and then we have risk to a global food supply. So this is serious business. We've got to get some solutions in place here to drive down the risk of climate change. And most of us know this, but the link here is that when we burn fossil fuels, that's changing the atmosphere and warming the planet. And the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions are coal for electricity. We also use natural gas to heat and power our homes, as well as to making electricity. And then a huge amount of fossil fuels are burning gasoline and diesel in our cars and trucks. That's a picture of the Oak Creek power plant. That's a coal-fired power plant on the shores of Lake Michigan. And so we've got to find ways to move from burning so much fossil fuels in order to stabilize the atmosphere here on planet Earth. So we've established these goals. We're trying to cut community-wide greenhouse gas emissions 45% by 2030, and then get to net zero by 2050. These are the same goals that the state has and that many other communities are adopting. And it's consistent with what science is telling us needs to be done to reduce the worst impacts of climate change. We've also got work to do on racial equity. So this is just one indicator that we look at among many. This is household income, and you'll see that white household income is it's nearly double Black household income in the city, and that has gotten worse over time, not better since the last recession. The disparity has expanded even further. These disparities are similar in everything from home ownership to employment to education and to what we call energy burden, which is a proportion of your household income that you spend on energy. And so lower income households are spending a much greater share of their income on just basic electric bills. And in some cases, it's not just as a percentage of their income, but in real dollars, they're often spending more because the homes are not insulated or have old equipment and things like that. So we've got a lot of work to do on racial equity. And this isn't just a city problem. I hear a lot of, well, the city is so bad on this. It's really a metropolitan problem and a state problem as well, because a lot of these trends are exacerbated by what's going on in our suburbs and people moving, wealthier people moving out, and poverty getting concentrated in the city. So we've got to think about it as a metropolitan problem, but the city needs to take a leadership stance on this. So in 2019, the city and county created a city-county task force on climate and economic equity with the emissions goals that I mentioned, plus these racial equity goals to create good-paying green jobs for people of color, to think about environmental justice. And we interpreted that to say that green jobs should pay at least $40,000 a year. With inflation, that might not even be the right number anymore, but we've got to get people. There's a lot of people working in our community, but a lot of them are underemployed. And so we need to get them employed in higher paying jobs. So, and there should be a lot of opportunity for creating green jobs in this new economy that we're envisioning that transitions towards more renewables and energy efficiency. This is all building on the current work that ECO does. Most of you are familiar with the Environmental Collaboration Office through our work with the Sherman Park and our Eco Neighborhoods initiative. But we've had good programs doing climate work for the better part of a decade. Milwaukee Shines is our renewable energy program that provides loans and group buys to make solar affordable for people. ME2 is our home energy efficiency program. We have a PACE financing program for a Better Buildings Challenge that helps large commercial buildings afford things like energy efficiency and renewable energy, and now electric vehicle charging. And we recently completed the largest solar energy project in the city's history, a 10-acre solar farm on a landfill next to General Mitchell Airport. So we've got a lot of good experience, but we've got to really accelerate this and start to have a bigger impact across the city. So the task force was formed in 2019, 2020. We passed task force wrote a preliminary report, and then we got our greenhouse gas inventory done. Throughout 2021, over 100 working group members, these are members of the community plus technical experts, formulated recommendations of what we call the 10 big ideas. And then in 2022, we've been taking all of those work group recommendations and putting them into the report that I showed you initially that could be adopted for city policies. So we're getting public comments now through November 30th of this year. We'll incorporate whatever feedback we get, and then we will take it to the Common Council to adopt it as part of the citywide policy plan. So what that means is not only will they be adopting these recommendations, but it'll be folded into the city's policy plan so that when the Department of City Development is doing neighborhood plans or more specific area plans for different neighborhoods, they'll incorporate these climate ideas in there. It'll also influence the kinds of things that we advocate for with the state for legislative changes, and it just provides a lot of basis for us to go after federal grants and things like that to try to make this plan a reality. So I mentioned greenhouse gases, thinking about the major sources. This is a breakdown from our greenhouse gas inventory. About 31% is from residential buildings, 22% is from transportation, 23% for commercial buildings, and then industrial wastewater treatment facilities account for 22%. If you look at this chart from Milwaukee County, the transportation share would be bigger because more people are driving in the metro area. So here's a quick snapshot of the 10 big ideas. We have trying to create green jobs through an Accelerator program. And I'll talk about all of these in a little bit more detail. Healthy Homes Upgrades is about combining lead abatement and energy efficiency so we can improve the efficiency of our existing homes. Number 3 is a new net zero energy home strategy, meaning we need to build new homes on vacant lots in the city. And we want those homes to be all electric and net zero energy. For commercial buildings, the larger buildings, we want to require that they report on their energy use and then potentially phase in standards where they have to cut their emissions over time. Number 5 is about people-centered transportation, which is about moving so much of the focus of our transportation system from the car to things like transit, walking, and biking. And the number 6 is for the cars we want to start transitioning that to electric vehicles. Number 7 is really important. That's about getting cleaner energy sources for our electricity supply. 8 is about getting more trees in our city. 9 is cutting food waste, and 10 is resilience ambassadors, which we'll talk about more. And I apologize for going quickly through this. There's a lot to cover. So the Green Jobs Accelerator is about trying to create clear pathways and excitement around green jobs. So we have different training programs that are out there, but I don't think a lot of people in their head put the ideas of what those, or maybe have a good clear sense of how do I get a job, meaningful job that's going to impact climate while helping me support my family. So we want to build excitement about the concept of green jobs, but clarify these career pathways. So as an example, Milwaukee Area Technical College, I just got off the phone with them because they've got funding to train people to do building automation systems. Well, most people have no idea what that means and don't know that that's a green job. But what it's about is, being the person that controls how the air conditioning and heating and ventilation systems in large buildings work. And there's a huge need for that. It's a career that pays really well. You don't need a college education, but you do need some training. And so we want to help people understand those career opportunities and support them while they're getting trained. So providing things like transportation and childcare. Ideally, we'd like transitional jobs with career ladders so people can start working immediately on basic skills, or basic jobs that don't require a lot of training, while exposing them to the higher paying jobs that do require more education. We want to provide the training with supports and then have memorandums with employers in place so that once people go through all this training, they know exactly where to go to get hired by employers who are willing to hire them and who share our commitment to diversifying the workforce. For green and healthy homes, we are talking about making our homes more energy efficient, but doing it in coordination with the same kind of efforts to reduce lead in our housing stock. So there's a lot of city money that's been put into lead abatement. A lot of times homeowners have to get relocated while that lead abatement is being done. And so while that's happening, we want to take that opportunity to go in and do energy efficiency, things like new insulation and things of that nature. We want to continue to expand our existing home weatherization and solar programs and create better navigation. There's a lot of different housing resource programs, including Sherman Park's housing repair program. We need to do a better job, I think, collectively to help people navigate through these programs and take full advantage of all the different programs that are out there to improve their housing. So in addition to fixing up our existing housing stock, we need new homes. And the idea here is that we want to build affordable homes built on vacant lots that are scattered through the city. We want them to be net zero energy and all electric. They got to be attractive and durable. And when you think about housing affordability, there's two sides of the equation. There's the cost of housing on the one end, and then there's people's wages on the other. So if people can make more, they can afford more. So in order to try to balance the scales on both sides, we want to try to do housing that is that's factory built. So not manufactured in the sense of, we're not talking trailer parks here. We're talking about high quality homes where you make whole wall sections, or even modular housing where three-dimensional units are built in a factory and then firmly secured to the ground, the foundation. So we are hoping that we can bring the cost down while creating good year-round manufacturing jobs that are actually healthier, because it's when you work in a factory, in a controlled factory setting, it's less wear and tear on your body than trying to build a house from scratch in the elements. For the larger commercial buildings, we're talking about benchmarking. So the idea here is just like when you go in to buy an appliance and you can see an energy rating on the outside, it's trying to apply the same kind of transparency to buildings. Cities around the country have done this. So we're talking about reporting annual energy use for larger commercial buildings so people can see if I want to be a tenant in these buildings, I want to go into a place where my energy bill may be less. So that's the concept, and then you can phase in energy standards later in the decade. We're talking about phasing that in, so there's time for the real estate sector to adjust. And this approach is we're taking this because the state of Wisconsin controls the statewide building energy code, meaning the state controls the real standards for how new buildings get built. We can't adjust that at the local level. But we are advocating that the state adopt a higher energy code, because right now I think the state's energy code is pretty mediocre compared to the rest of the country, and there's a lot of room for improvement so that every new building in the state that gets built is much more energy efficient. So that's buildings. Now we're going to transition to transportation, and the biggest thing we need to do is essentially drive less. I think this supports the mayor's vision of trying to increase the population of the city. So you think about transit and walking and biking is tied up with how we zone the city and the land use decisions that we make. So when you have a very dense urban environment with more apartments and more people, you can support more transit, and you can support commercial businesses can locate closer to where people can walk and bike to work. So we've got to have a series of zoning changes and things that reduce the amount of real estate that we devote to parking, and instead try to get more people back in cities, which is good for our tax base as well, and then have better transit. And so there's a call for expanding the streetcar, but also expanding bus rapid transit lines. Currently, there's one bus rapid transit line that's going on Wisconsin Avenue. And the plan calls for expanding that to 7 or 8 new routes. So the idea is that not only having transit, but having faster, more efficient transit will get more people to use it. That being said, we know people are still going to drive cars, and so we want to try to create incentives to get more electric vehicles on the road, and that means more electric vehicle charging opportunities, so people can feel confident in buying an electric car that they can get around. We're working on ordinances right now to require electrification and hybrids in the city's fleet. And we're looking at requirements so that anybody who puts in big parking structures has to allocate a certain amount of spots towards electric vehicles. And all of this needs to be done with public awareness so that people feel good about buying electric cars instead of gas burning cars over time. We know there's a lot of equity considerations for this, and so that's built into our planning as well. On the electricity front, this is an area where we want both a competitive rooftop solar market so to make it easier for people to put solar on their own roofs, but we also need the utilities to be better partners in this. So we want the utilities to transition more quickly to renewables for their power, but we also want them to be better partners with the rooftop solar market. So there's a lot of things that utilities have done, particularly We Energies has done, to make it more difficult for people to install solar on their roofs than it is in other states. And so we're advocating for changes to that so that they need to be better partners to allow people to put their own solar on. But we do want to work with them directly. They are our utility, and so we want to work with them to purchase large-scale renewables. So we have a proposal working with We Energies that they've been helpful on to allow the city to purchase 100% of our renewable power from renewable energy sources. Right now, renewables make up, about 8% of where our electricity comes from. The majority is coal, natural gas, and nuclear. And so we want to say, as a large customer that uses a lot of electricity for our 110 municipal buildings, we want that to come from renewables, and we want an option for our utility to provide that to us. So I'm optimistic about that one, but we got a lot of work to do. And this one underpins a lot of the other strategies. We have electric cars as a recommendation, but it's a whole lot better for the environment if that electricity is actually coming from renewable energy. Then we have nature in the city. So the other ones were a lot about energy policy, but this is about bringing nature back into the cities, which means protecting natural land that we have along our rivers. It means accelerating the work we're doing to transform schoolyards. So currently, we work with MPS as well as the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, the Green Schools Consortium of Milwaukee, to transition 5 schoolyards a year. And the plan calls for doubling that to 10. And you can see in the picture there, this is Bayview Montessori School. There's a before and after. And we're just really excited about this program where it's about, instead of just having kids play on, go out to recess and play on the asphalt and chain link fence, have fun kids out there doing that. It's about changing that to create better play environments for kids where they can have outdoor learning, but also help us manage our stormwater and reduce the urban heat island effect. So this has been a very, very successful program that we want to expand. Then we want to expand the urban tree canopy by working with groups like Branch Out Milwaukee and neighbors that are interested to get more trees into the city. And we want to do that by incentivizing de-paving. So not just putting trees on vacant lots that are already grassy, because that's good in a way, but it also reduces the land we have for new housing. I think the place to put trees is if we can, again, de-pave all this, not entirely, but at least reduce the amount of parking asphalt that we have and get more trees in our parking lots and along the edges of streets. So if we do that, trees pull carbon out of the atmosphere, but they also create, it helps cool our cities, and it's just more pleasant to live in. Number 9 is about reducing food waste. So when we throw food and other organics into the landfill, it decomposes and creates methane, which is or natural gases that are actually a very powerful greenhouse gas source. So if we can keep waste or food waste and organics out of the landfill, that's a good thing to do. And rather, composting is a good strategy, but even before that, if we can feed hungry people with our excess waste and make sure we're tackling hunger and cutting food waste at the same time, that's even preferable. And so there's a proposal which we're calling FEED, which is a public-private partnership to try to put less waste in the landfill and feed hungry people. So you can imagine large events where there might be catering or whatever, making sure that we're getting that excess food to people who are hungry and in need. And there's a proposal from in front of Milwaukee County to make this happen and get it funded. And then as a secondary strategy, we want to reuse plastics. We've done a lot of work with Plastic Free Milwaukee, and we're working to try to get a plastic reuse system in place so that places that put a lot of plastic out for takeout, that we can actually collect that and wash it and reuse it rather than trying to throw it away or recycle it. Reusing is better than recycling. And there's some national companies that do that. So we're excited about both of those proposals. And then lastly is the idea of the resilience ambassadors, which is, building off our Eco Neighborhoods program, building off people like you that want to help get the word out about this and tell people about it. Because we can create programs all day long, but if we don't tell people about them and have them use them, they won't be as effective. So, that's why it's so important that we work with Sherman Park and other groups, because you know the people in your neighborhoods better than we do. And so you can be trusted messengers for this, and we can be a resource to you to get programs in front of people. So those are the 10 big ideas. Some of these are already being implemented. Some will need more federal funding, but we're already moving forward with at least 3 or 4 of these already. So the big question is, how do you pay for this? We all know the city budgets are really bad and tight. There is some opportunity, I think, for reallocating existing budgets that we're currently spending on fossil fuels and move that to climate action. So, big example is how we spend money on roads. So lots of money is being spent at the state and city level on roads, and we can reallocate some of that to do our roads better so that we're accommodating transit and biking and things like that. We've also done other mechanisms to invest in energy efficiency in our buildings. I mentioned our PACE financing program does that, and we're also doing that in city buildings as well. And then the biggest opportunity here is the federal infrastructure bill and the climate bill called the Inflation Reduction Act that Congress passed. So they passed billions of dollars in the last 2 years for climate action. And so we're really excited to have this plan in place so we can go after that federal funding and say, look, we got a plan and we're in a good position to get that funding. So that's going to be a lot of the work of our office and other partners going forward, is to try to make sure we're getting grant applications in and telling people how they can get access to these funds to implement the program. I mentioned we have this public comment process. We had lots of working groups, and we've done our best to take all the feedback that we've gotten over the last 2 years and turn it into a viable plan. But we have this last chance for public comment. So if you go to the website, and again, I'll put it in the chat, there's a survey that you can fill out about it. And then if you go to the individual chapters of the plan, you can write more detailed descriptions about what you like and what you might want to see change. And I'll put those links in the chat. And then we'll take all of that in December. We'll incorporate the feedback and take it to the city council committees in January of next year with a hope of adopting it in February. So that's the plan. And I am, to whatever time we have, I'm happy to answer some questions.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Mabel, let's end the recording. Thank you, Eric, for a great summary. And
Okay, that concludes the explanation and overview from Eric Schomburger. Did you want to close us out, Steve?
Yes, I can. Just get my sound up. Okay, doke. I think it's an excellent evening. Have ideas? Anything else that pops up in your minds, guys? There we go.
I really encourage everyone to look at the plan and get feedback on it.
Yeah.
I was on a call the other day and we took a deep dive into the big idea that was on like walkable and bikeable communities. And so like while the webinar was playing, I was like on the website, like putting in my feedback that I had on that plan. So they make it pretty easy to get in there and give feedback on the plan. And I think it's really important that they hear from as many people as possible.
Especially us. We've been in the trenches.
Mhm.
We're not just looking at this first time out. So I think that's helpful too. I think he does make a good point. We've been at this. We've got some things that we've already implemented. We can kind of rehash that back to them or what we think we could improve. I think that would help them out immensely. And with your thinking about the gardens and that type of thing, the whole thing he's talking about composting and all of that, we've learned a lot in our neighborhoods. I think it's good for them to hear from us, those of us who have been doing this for a while. So I think that's a good point too. Any other ideas?
Nope, I think that's a really great point though, Steve. Thank you for that observation.
Yeah.
I did just want to, before we wrap up, and I know this might be a little bit off subject of our topics and the meeting or Eric's words, but I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have our annual meeting coming up, and that's going to be on Tuesday, December 6th. It will be at the Embassy Center, MKE, which was formerly named Park Lawn Assembly of God. So we do want to remind people to come out to that. We start at 6 p.m. We'll gather and promptly get our meeting started. We will also be having our green ambassadors speaking at this particular annual meeting. So we encourage all of you to attend.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Jermaine, anything from you before we quit? You're out there in the trenches all the time.
No, I definitely always try to keep in mind that along with all of the federal and, what you name it, whatever the funding source is, that we'll have the money here, and we just need to be, moving forward the workforce to be able to get those upgrades and to have all of the energy efficiency ideas in all of our homes. So we have to also consider the workforce. Just always look for that.
That's great. Thank you. Leah, Jules, thank you. Thanks for being with us tonight. It's
Thank you
great.
so much, all of you. We love working with
Yeah.
with you all in Sherman Park, and I love being a part of the community too.
Oh,
welcome.
absolutely. And welcome, again. Everyone, please have a safe and enjoyable Thanksgiving.
Likewise, you too, Mabel, put your feet up.
Oh, sure.
Good luck with that grant.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. for sure.
exactly. I know that.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
night. Uh-huh.
Enjoy
Bye,
your rest of
everybody.
it.
Bye-bye.
you
Hope
soon.
to see you at the
Thank you, thank
annual
you.
meeting.
Yep.